There we go. The recording's on. And share screen. You'd think by now I'd know how to do all this stuff. There we go. I worked hard on the slideshow. So welcome everybody. Hang on a second. There we go. So we got Travis Rhoads here tonight talking to us. We don't normally have a speaker in January. So Travis, I think you have the honor of being our first January speaker in a couple of years.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
So I'm sure you're excited about that.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can hear
okay.
You.
The little box on my Zoom window didn't light up that I was speaking. So.
Yeah. Let's see what we got. So we're going to talk a little bit of business. We have some new things we're doing this year. We're going to talk a little bit about events. Travis will speak. And then we'll do our photo challenge. We have 14 entries tonight. I think it was 14. So the first thing I want to do is, real quick, is talk about dues. Dues are $20 for an individual or $30 for a family. I've gone over the benefits lots of times, but basically get a lot more out of your dues, more benefits if you decide to pay the dues. In order to participate in the monthly challenge, you have to be a paid member. Also, to get invites to the workshops, you need to be a paid member. Now, I know not everybody's had a chance to pay their dues tonight, so I am accepting if you've entered the challenge tonight and you haven't paid your dues yet, that's okay. But going forward, we need you to pay your dues by the end of the month for the challenges. The dues are for the calendar year, so they start basically whenever you pay until the end of December. And you can go to northgeorgiaphotographyclub.com to pay your dues. I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but our website is going through a revision. So we have the old website up right now with pictures of people who are no longer in the club, with the exception of Herman. If you have trouble connecting to the website, then what you need to do is empty your cache and then refresh your browser, and you should be able to connect to it. And if you still have problems, contact me and I can give you the direct link to the payment page. So one of the things we did this year is we made some changes to our planning committee. We've just grown so big that we just needed to reorganize that a little bit to make things a little bit more efficient and also to help me out. So we've created a board of directors. That board of directors consists of me and Lisa and Dick and Herman. Lisa and I are now co-presidents. So basically 50-50, and if you can't reach me about something, contact Lisa. If you can't reach Lisa, contact me, but that's just going to help me out a lot. Dick is still going to be our vice president, and Herman is our treasurer, and he's not here tonight. He's not feeling well, so he's not on the meeting. And I know there's a lot of new members, a lot of new people who have joined this year. Excuse me. If you don't know Herman, he's actually the founder of the club. He founded the club in 2013, and he was the club president until 2019. And so I took over 2019, 2020, and this year Lisa and I are sharing the presidential duties. And then we've had a planning committee for a couple of years, but people didn't really have assignments. So we decided to make things a little bit more efficient and easier. Everybody on the planning committee has a specific assignment. So we have a trip committee that consists of Dick and Bobby Arnold and Michelle Grabowski. I know they've been working on trips for the year. Michelle and Jim Perkins are responsible for getting us speakers. We have a workshop committee that's going to be Lori Beasley and Timmy Schaller. Timmy is a new member to the club, so we want to welcome her and looking forward to that. We had a committee for meetings and coming up with the themes for the year. Rick Olson and Dick were in charge of that, and all the themes that we picked for this year were based on the results from the survey we did at the end of the year. Lisa and I, since we pretty much handle Facebook, we're the social media committee. And then we have a website committee that's going to be Herman and Corey Huntington, who's another new member. And like I said, we're revising the website. So we'll kind of keep you updated on progress, and hopefully it won't take too long and we'll have the new website up. And then Barry Smith, everybody knows Barry. He's a part of the planning committee too. He's kind of at large, so he's going to help us out wherever we need him to help us. So we've got the Quinlan show. It's still running through February 21st. Lisa, I don't know if you have any news about that. You mentioned something to me the other day.
The only news I have, I guess, is that I had a member make a great suggestion to me for anybody that hasn't been able to get to the show and may not get to the show because they're concerned about their health or the health of any guests that they would like to see the show. I'm going to see if I can get the director or may myself go and try to do a video tour of the show that we can publish probably on our website if it's available at the time, or on our Facebook pages, or maybe through some other means as well, so that any of you who are not able to physically go and see the show can view it, because certainly we would like you all to go and see the show in person, but above anything else, we would like you to see the show. So if we can provide it to you by video, we'd love to be able to do that. So I'm going to see this next week if that's something that that we can accomplish.
And on that note, something I hadn't mentioned because I only thought about it today, I'm going to try to create a YouTube channel for the club. That way, I've been recording all the meetings, but then they're saved on Zoom's cloud. And since we're using we have a limited amount of space we have on their cloud, and so I have to delete it each month to do the next one. So I figured if we get a YouTube channel, then we can put the recordings of the meetings on there, and they'll be there forever. So
talk to Herman. I think he already has a YouTube channel for us.
Yeah, I checked on that. It was actually his personal account.
Oh.
So he had his other stuff on there. I have a personal YouTube account, so I just want to see if I can get a channel that's just North Georgia Photography Club. And I only started looking at it about an hour before the meeting, so I know it can be done. I just gotta figure it out. But
yeah,
probably we'll
you
have
could
the
have more
video
than
up
you can have more than one that you manage. It's pretty easy.
Travis, do you know anything about YouTube channels?
No, I don't know anything about YouTube channels.
And I saw Michael on there. He might know a little bit about YouTube channels too, but only when it's freezing cold outside. So yeah, if I have any questions, I'll contact you. Like I said, I was just looking at it before the meeting, and I'd rather have one that's just branded for the club, so that way there's no conflicts or whatever if somebody were to leave the club and then the YouTube channel is on their account or whatever. So I wasn't planning on announcing that tonight, but Lisa opened that up. So anyways, let's see, with regards to trips, we're thinking about doing a trip to Zoo Atlanta in February, probably towards the end of the month. So I'll let either Dick or Michelle talk about that real quick.
So the trick with the zoo is that due to the virus, First, you have to buy your ticket online. Second, the tickets are for a specific time, and they limit the number of people that they'll admit at each time. I think it's 15-minute intervals. So that's one problem if we get a lot of people. The other is that the path through the zoo is orchestrated to be one way. So if you go past something, decide you want to go back, you have to go all the way around. So kind of a pain, but I'm thinking one of the last 2 Saturday mornings, probably it's in February, sounds like the right time to try to do it. I will pick a date and put it on Facebook probably the next couple of weeks so that people can get tickets if they decide they want to.
Hey, Dick, if it's one way through the thing, actually in a way that's almost good because it almost would force you to see everything, I imagine, right?
Well, yeah, it's just that if you decide to want to go back to a previous venue.
Yeah, and I mean that
All the way around.
almost always happens once. You
Yeah.
go by the gorillas and they're not in a good place, and then you go back later and they are, and yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So
I'd still do it.
anyway,
You just won't be able to turn around right away. You'll just have to go all the way around and
Right.
and come back.
but in addition to that, we got a number of, I posted the whole list of ideas we had on in our sort of tentative schedule or by month on Facebook. I think it's under my name if you want to look it up. But we'll see how both the weather and the virus play out. Back to you, Mike.
No, you're welcome. Yeah, what we definitely want to try to do, any events or workshops we do, we want to make sure we maintain safety and social distancing. No trips or anything are worth, risking our lives. So we want to make sure everything is safe. We're also working on workshops for this year. Probably won't do anything until the weather is warmer because we want to be outside. We have some ideas that Lori, I don't think Lori's on, but Timmy's on. And, so we have ideas from the survey, and they're already started working on that, and we're going to see what we can come up. Just out of curiosity, I was going to ask for a show of hands, but half the people don't have their screen on. Are people interested in doing workshops in the spring if they're outside, where you got the social distancing? Okay, from the video, the people I can see, I'm taking that as a yes. So that was one thing we were concerned with, and it will probably require masks for that. And hey, I just found out that you can raise your hand, apparently digitally, because a lot of you are doing that. I didn't know you could do that. Anyway, so maybe an outside lab type workshop where we kind of work maybe one-on-one, maybe like at a waterfall or something. How do you shoot a waterfall? How do you compose your pictures? What kind of settings do you use? Things like that. So that's kind of stuff we're throwing around. And maybe for something more technical, like maybe a Lightroom workshop might be able to be done on Zoom, because you can't really do that outside. So that's what we're looking at, maybe starting in March once the weather gets warmer. All right, let's see. And that's it for the business. So now we can get on to the good part of the meeting. So I think everybody knows Travis Rhoads. He has talked to us many times and on many subjects. And tonight it's going to be an introduction to architectural photography. So give me just a second here, Travis, and you should be able to share your screen. All right, see if it'll let you share.
See if we get this to work.
Well, that looks right.
Well, sometimes it has a hard time with the share
Mhm.
occasionally because it's not putting the, let me do this. Let me do this differently. Well, come on, let me have it back. Well, now I've lost all of my Zoom controls.
They should be at the top of your screen.
No, I've lost them all. I can see the screen with everybody's faces, but I cannot see. I don't have. Oh, it's way over here. It moved to my other screen. All right, let's try this again. Nope. Well, why is that not cooperating today? Y'all are seeing the one with the black borders, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay, let me. Is that better?
Yeah, that looks like right.
Now you're seeing just the white screen with the date and the title?
Yes.
Okay, we got it figured out now. Sorry about that. So thanks for having me this evening. And I didn't realize y'all don't usually have a January speaker. So I'm honored to do that for you this evening. For those that have not seen any of my presentations before, this one's kind of interesting for me because I've got 21 years in the field of architecture as my day job. I graduated from Savannah College of Art and Design with my master's in architecture. And through picking up photography, I've been able to blend both my love of photography and my love of architecture. Being on job sites all the time, I have pretty good access to architecture and have really enjoyed shooting architecture even back when I was in college. So this one is my fundamentals in architecture presentation. The name is derived from one of the classes I had while I was in architecture called the Fundamentals of Architecture. So this one's just about photography tonight, and I'm really looking forward to it. I've got everyone pulled up on the screen over here on my side, so I can't really see you. If you have a question, just go ahead and speak up now or during the presentation while we're doing it, because that means it'll be more time specific and make more sense to have the conversation about a question as I'm giving the presentation rather than waiting to the end. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started. In architecture, there are three real main styles of architecture photography for me. There is the documentary kind, there's portfolio, and then there's fine art. And in portfolio and documentary have similar characteristics where you're trying to represent a space as it is and not taking too many artistic liberties with those spaces. Like this one here, this is a portfolio image for an interior designer for a high-end house that I did. And the goal is to present the space as it looks, as you would experience it. So any lighting that I've added is very minimal, and it's really just to help highlight the space. Another one that's portfolio, this is blending the landscape architecture and interior architecture, showing the relationship of those two kinds of spaces to each other. This is for landscape architect out in California that I work with. And portfolio and documentary architectural photography, you really are just trying to capture the space, not only as it sits, but sometimes as the people would use it. And in this case, the client, you bought that great big door so that they could open their dining room off onto their patio area. So that was a key thing to photograph. So if you're taking pictures of architecture, try to imagine how it gets used by the occupant or the owner, and try to document that for, you know, the architect or the landscape architect. This is another one that's a documentary type style. This is a library kind of room in a model home. And this one showcases one point perspective where I'm trying to get squared up on one wall and photograph it as it recedes in. This one here is a little bit of a twist on a 1 point. And this one is a 2 point perspective where the walls are coming in from the sides. So that's something to consider when you're photographing a space, is your alignment to different things. Do you want to be aligned to the back wall, or do you want to let the walls come in from the corners? And then there's fine art. And I know a lot of people really like to do fine art architectural photography. And for me, that means that there are no rules. You can do whatever you want and modify whatever you like and change as much as you want. Later on, I'll show this picture again and the original picture, and we'll talk about it in a bit. But in fine art architectural photography, for me, there's no limits to what you can do. And it is just, it's less about documenting the space or a building as it is about light and shadow and surfaces and textures. So in documentary, it's true to life. It's how it's experienced. It's showcasing the best features of a building or the spaces of a building. And it's minimal Photoshop work. Not taking things out a lot, not removing a lot of things, not adding things particularly. Because a lot of time the client is going to be either an architect, an owner, an interior designer, or a contractor, or a real estate agent. The one in here in the top right, this was for a model home for a company doing senior living development. And so they wanted to be able to show what those spaces are going to look like for the people that are buying those homes. So you can't make it crazy looking or go crazy and take things out or remove all the light fixtures from the ceiling, but still have light in the room. The people want to know what it's actually going to look like to live in that space. When I'm doing portfolio stuff that's sometimes for the architect or for us, sometimes there's a little leeway on taking things in or out. You can see in this top left one here, I've left all of the HVAC vents and the ugly, return air vents, but in the bottom one, taking all of those out, because the reality is those things are not as important to that space for the architect, which was actually my firm doing this one, as it is in, more of a documentary setting. So in the portfolio world, there is the leeway to take things in or out and kind of adjust them to make them really present the space. Because to me, these items are a little bit distracting. Yes, they're there, but nobody looking at the architect's website is looking at that to see if you've put HVAC systems in. They're looking at it to see what kind of spaces you design. And then there's the fine art stuff, and that's just the free-for-all. You can see the building up here on the top left. This was how it was when I shot the picture, and this is what the result was. And this is a building in New York City, and if anyone's ever been to New York City, it's not the cleanest place in the world. Every last one of those panes of glass on that building was dirty, and I spent all the time to clean it, and also to kind of bend the light and shape the light as it goes around the curves, because it was just kind of a blah day when I was there. And I didn't really have an option to come back a different day or shoot it at a different time of day. So I just took the liberty to make it look the way I wanted it to. This bottom one here is the Ravenel Bridge down in Charleston. And if you study it closely, you can see all of the different things that were removed from this photograph. Light poles, seams in the cables, this light pole, shadows, people, just hours and hours on end to create a very clean, stark, fine art image. And that's just kind of, if you take the time and want to, you can really go crazy with it. But that's more fine art photography. Again, this is another building down in downtown Atlanta. Obviously, I've taken the sky out, and all of these little panes in the windows are all each individual selections, so that I could darken and lighten to create those patterns on the building that weren't there as much. But it was, again, it's working with the patterns that were already in the building and just accentuating them and making them more pronounced. But that's fine art. The limit is really what your imagination can come up with. If we're not doing fine art photography where we're looking straight up the building or something like that, one of the really key things to get right is correcting the perspective distortion. And if you can't do it in the field with a perspective correcting lens like a tilt shift lens, I always use a program called DxO, and it helps correct perspective. And you can see these little lines here. I don't know if you can see those real clear, but you can see that there's a little bit of perspective correction going on here. The building is leaning in a little bit. And that comes from tilting the camera up or down and not having the camera perfectly level. And sometimes it's really hard because if your camera doesn't have a built-in level or you don't have a bubble level on your camera, you can get a little bit of a perspective distortion just from the camera being pointed down or up. And so this DxO program, it's called Viewpoint, it helps correct that perspective and get the lines of the corners of the building nice and straight and clean. And doing documentary and portfolio type work, that's very important. And even if I feel like I got it right in camera in the field, every image that is non-fine art, I still run through this program and go in and check it because it lets you get down to a pixel level of closeness and detail to make sure that your building corners are straight up and down and that you don't have any perspective correction that needs to be done.
What was that program called?
It's called DxO Viewpoint. It's by the same people that now own the Nick collection. It's probably one of the best little programs I use. Right now it's on version 3, and it's been version 3 for several years now. If they ever correct it, I mean, if they ever update it, I think once you buy it, you get the updates for life. But for all of my architectural photography, anything that doesn't have exaggerated perspective on purpose, everything goes through that. And this slide,
Photoshop.
it's a plugin for Photoshop. Yep, it kind of like the Nick suite. When you're working in Photoshop, you can go to your filters and bring it up, and it opens up inside Photoshop. And then it will help. You can either let it auto crop or you can tell it you'll crop it later. But it will just spit your image back out into Photoshop with the corrected perspective. And it is extremely powerful. It is very good at what it does. And you can either do it by the verticals, you can do it by horizontals, you can do it by linked verticals and horizontals, or you can do it by loose verticals and horizontals, where the horizontals are not connected to the verticals. And you can actually take this image on the left and transform it into more like this image on the right using that program. It does create a little bit of a distortion if you're too far off, but it is actually very good at what it does on fixing perspective correction. So.
One more question, Travis.
Okay.
In this case, your final image is also quite a bit warmer, and yet the sky is also bluer. Do you remember kind of what you did to accomplish that?
Well, this image, the real concept of this slide is the perspective of where you're at. The image on the left was lower, standing on the ground with a tripod up at about 8 feet. And the one on the right, I was actually up high. I actually got up on top of a ladder. I'm on a 12-foot ladder to get a little bit more of a view down. The image on the left is the unedited kind of raw file that camera put out, which was usually kind of flat and a little bit cold.
Yep.
I waited until to shoot this building. You can just see that the sun is setting out of the glare off of the windows, and you can kind of see the reflected sunset in the windows there. So the sky behind the building is nice and blue, so that the sun is not causing the sky to be all washed out. But basically, it's just because of editing, warming it back up from the raw file, and then bringing the sky back to what it really looked like. So
Okay, thank
the
you.
one on the left is just cold. The Canon 5D Mark II usually tended to produce very flat, very cold raw files. They always needed to be warmed up a little bit. But it's all about controlling perspective. If you're too low on the ground and you have to tilt your camera up to get all of the building in, you're going to get lots of perspective distortion. So if you get higher up and shoot more straight on and level, you won't have as much perspective to control and correct. So you won't have as much distortion.
Which camera did you say you used on that?
On this one, it was the Canon 5D Mark II and the Canon 17-40 lens. This was before I had a tilt shift lens. You can do
Hey,
it with
Travis.
any camera. Yes.
Hey, what tilt shift lens do you use? And is it with your Sony?
I used the two Canon tilt shift lenses, the 17 and the 24. I've actually used the 17, the 24, the 45, and the 90. And I use them on my Sony now via an adapter. But the 17 and the 24, I absolutely love those two lenses. They are special lenses. If I go backwards, this image on the bottom right was with the 17 millimeter. For architecture, they just have such a really cool look to them that you just can't get with a standard lens.
Is that primarily for outdoor architecture, or do you use them for indoor too?
I use them for indoors as well. This image here on the left, this is actually a tilt shift lens with the 24 millimeter. It just gives you a little bit wider field of view, and you can control. It's like doing a panorama. We're going to get into it here in a minute. I've got a whole tilt shift slide, but tilt shifts are just great because they can bring so much more in to view that you can't get with a single frame, with a single lens focal length. Here's the tilt shift slide. So this is a project that we did in downtown Atlanta. This is the old Carnegie building. And I'm backed up about as far as I can get on the sidewalk to not have too much of the buildings to my right in the frame. And so the only real solution was to shoot it with the 17 millimeter tilt shift lens. And the most frustrating thing about this is that guy in that taxi cab just wasn't leaving. I tried to get him to go over and leave, and he said, "Nope, I'm not leaving. You can just take the picture with me in it." So I did, but you can see that what it does is you take all of these different pictures by rotating the lens around and shifting the lens back and forth. And it produces an image like this where you can see the stair-step sides, and you crop all of that out and you get a really nice clean image, because you can see that this is the middle image, 17 millimeters looking straight at the building. And you can see that I can't get the top of the building in there at 17 millimeters, which on a full frame, which is very wide. So with the tilt shift lens, because I can shift up, I can all of a sudden pick up the top of the building and get it in the frame where I couldn't get it in the frame in a single shot. So you kind of pan around to the right and you shift and rotate, and you end up with this great big image that's a huge file. The detail is phenomenal when you get to putting all of these together. It's a lot like doing a panorama stitch or a gigapan type image. It's very sharp and can be printed very large. But tilt shifts are some of the most fun thing to work with in architecture, because it just gives you such a unique view and presentation of the building. One that's a little bit unnatural, because even our eyes, we have to look up a little bit to see the top of a tall building like that. So it's kind of a unique, different view on a building that's a little hard to see in person, but it's a nice way to present the building. Something that's very important about architectural photography is showing the sense of place. Now, both of these images on the left are crops of the two images on the right, but you can see that both of them lose a sense of where that building sits based on, sorry, my camera is making some weird noises at me. You can see that the building has more of a sense of where it is. This particular image up here, this is a hotel, and it shows that that building is out on the marina, which is something that's very important for that building. The location is what's selling the guest rooms on that side of the building. But for something that's a more of a fine art type image that you shoot, I know Mike likes going and finding old barns, showing it in this big open field gives it a little bit more of a sense of where that building is, and it gives it a home. And it creates a little bit more of an element of the story rather than just zooming in and taking a picture of just the building close up. I always try to include a little bit of sense of space around my buildings in my photographs. This is one, it's a rooftop garden in San Francisco. I could have shot it from over here by the grill and just looked this way and got the same images, but it didn't have the sense of place of where this is. Now it shows that this is a rooftop garden in a downtown urban environment. And it just really adds an element of depth and interest to the scene to be able to see where that project or that space or building sits. That's all when we're photographing a lot of exteriors. When you start photographing interiors, whether it's the Roswell Photographic Group, they like to go to the old historic homes that are down here in Roswell. And a lot of times people take a picture of one little room or a corner of the room, and photographs tend to make the buildings look really small. They tend to, because we have such unless you're shooting with a 12 millimeter lens or something like that, you're shooting at 18 or 25 millimeters, and it makes buildings and rooms look very small. So one of the tricks that I like to do and use is shooting through things, including the adjacent room or adjacent rooms, or photographing through a doorway into a room. It creates layers of space and layers in the image and makes it a little bit more interesting. For this hotel room, it shows that this is a suite room. It has a bed off over there that's got its own door with the desk area and the couches and whatnot. For this one, it shows the long procession of that hallway going down, and it shows the depth of those front rooms. This is another one from the same house where it's looking from the foyer into the study room. So it's just a matter of, instead of photographing it from inside the room with a 25 millimeter lens, maybe back up or figure out how to work through a room and include more than just the one space you're in, and kind of create layers and depth. Again, this is that same kitchen, but it's creating depth. We now have the room off in the distance. We have the family room here in this side, and showing how all of those spaces are coming together and how they're all connected. It just creates more of an interesting, more of an image with more depth. We all love leading lines. We all like to work with them. And in architecture, it's always fun to find ways to use any kind of a leading line to emphasize your subject. For me, leading lines are not just having lines running through a frame. They need to be something that helps guide your eye either through the frame and tell you which direction to move, or they need to point you to the focal point of your subject. So for this image here, this is a building in downtown. The sweeping lines in the ground and then in the roller coaster track, for lack of a better word, guide the eye through the frame and carry you through. and then you come back out to here and come back around. For this one in Grand Central Station, I used the highlights along this bridge and the top of the bridge to guide the eye right down to Grand Central Station's main terminal. But the lines over here on this side were doing the same thing. Everything was focusing the eye down into the Grand Central Station. That's my focal point. So those are the leading lines, using that to work and guide the eye right to what I want to see. These things are all just a little bit darker. The brightness is here. That's the focal point of the subject. So I'm using those compositional elements to draw the eye to it. So think about that if you're out photographing in downtown Atlanta or something, or you know, anywhere, is use lines. Don't just zoom in on the subject. Use elements to make more of a scene. You know, this has got that whole scene or sense of place. I mean, I even left in all the trash bins and stuff, and the police cars and the people. It's all about where that thing is, what that place is, and telling the story of it. So it's not just about zooming in on, you know, I could have zoomed in on just this and it wouldn't have been interesting. But to me, including all of that stuff and all of that context around it was really important. We always talk about photography is the capture of light and the way light plays off of any subject. And in buildings, it's very important because buildings are such three-dimensional objects and light affects them differently for the different sides or the direction of light. This is a building in New York City. You can see that the light on the side of the building is much brighter, and then shooting from the shadowed side of the building lets me get that three-dimensionality of the building. It doesn't look as flat. It's not as static. It's got a little more context with the building behind it, but it's got shape to it. And light helps shape the buildings. I mean, this is an old church downtown Atlanta. The light creates highlights and shadows, and that creates that three-dimensionality. And buildings are so three-dimensional, and to just photograph them in flat light or just straight on to this face of this building, they lose some of that depth and that three-dimensional feeling to them. So work with that light. Make sure you're using the light to accentuate the different shapes of the building. Or waiting for the right light. This is another project in San Francisco, and we were waiting on the blue hour to get in so that the lights of the house would glow and have a nice warm feeling of the house, the warmth of the lights in the houses around it, but also being able to see the warmth of the fire in the fire pit. It's all about waiting for the right light. We shot at this house for 3 hours that evening, and we were waiting for this moment to just have just that right amount of light and the right kind of light. Architecture is more than just buildings. It's the built environment. It's all kinds of different things, whether it's a landscape architecture or it's a bridge. I mean, this was a fine art type image down in Charleston. And it's all about the sculptural elements of this bridge and capturing those and telling a little bit of the story of that particular sunset, the big pink glow on the horizon. So it's not just buildings. It's architecture is all kinds of built environment. It's bridges. It's, you know, a wide variety of different things. So it's got so many different things you can take pictures of, and we classify it as architectural photography. So it's just fun to explore the different options. I'm particularly drawn to urban skylines because of their interesting shapes and the play of light and different conditions, whether it's the ice pack being frozen in Chicago or the light reflecting off of the buildings, you know, at a sunset, or as the city lights come on. You know, don't just photograph a skyline, you know, at one time of day. Come back at another time of day and see if it changes. we sat and shot in this particular scene for almost 2 hours waiting for the light to do just what it did, where we get a little bit of a sunset behind, some nice big sweeping clouds, but we were waiting on the city lights to come on, because that just gave so much more context and so much more texture to the image. Once all those little lights came on, this is a panorama that can be printed probably 120 inches wide, but just really neat context. This was kind of an accident. We didn't realize that the sun was going to set and show and reflect off of those buildings that way, but it kind of created a neat effect in the water. We doing okay so far? Any questions?
How long were
Doing good.
your exposures on those?
Excuse me?
How long were your timed exposures on those?
This one I think was 15 seconds, because I was doing a panorama. I didn't want the clouds to move too much from one frame to the next. And this one was probably in the 30-second range. It wasn't too terribly long. And this one was not very long at all because the ice pack was actually moving. So I had to shoot a quick exposure for this one to not have the ice be blurry. Because with the movement of the water under it, the ice was moving a lot, and it was really weird to listen to because it sounded like breaking glass. All of these big scallops of ice cracking against each other. That was one morning, and this was the next night. It was all gone. The ice was all gone.
Yeah, I used to live over
The coldest I have ever been with my camera in hand was shooting this picture right here in Chicago. The ambient temperature I think was 12 degrees, and the wind chill was -10, -15, something like that. I was bundled up. My camera has quit on me. I'm not sure why. So I was bundled up, and the only thing that was the only skin that was visible was around my glasses. I had my hat pulled down and my neck gaiter pulled up. And when I got back to my hotel room, the skin that was still visible was blood red from the windburn and the cold. It was so cold. I don't know that I've ever been so cold as I was standing there on that thing that morning, but I got the shot and I really liked it. So sometimes we put ourselves through some pretty silly things to get a picture. But
Yeah, I have another question. How does your camera behave in those kind of temperatures? Do you have to do anything special?
well, I went through 4 batteries in about an hour. The cold really tends to make batteries not last very long, even when they're brand new. It just they lose all of their power. Other than that, the camera did just fine. It was just the batteries didn't last very long. So I tried it when I'm shooting in a really cold place like that. I will try to put a couple of batteries in my jacket pockets that are against me to try to keep them warm rather than leaving them in my camera bag where they're exposed to the cold more, because they tend to do a little better and work a little better if you keep them warm. But really for me, the cold it really just affected the batteries. And I've had that problem shooting at Mount Rainier in the snow. The batteries just don't last very long. The camera does fine. It's just the batteries are the thing that get in the way.
Travis, could I ask a question back to your tilt shift lenses?
Absolutely.
What adapter do you use between your Canon to your Sony camera?
I have used both the Metabones adapter, the smart adapter, and the Sigma MC11. The Sigma MC11 is what I have now, only because I dropped the Metabones, and I dropped it, and it damaged the contacts on it. It's the only piece of gear outside of the lens that tried to escape out of my bag at Raven Cliffs. It's the only time I've ever dropped anything, and it ruined it. It's no good anymore. So I bought the MC11, and it works really well, and it's lightweight, and it was a lot less expensive. So.
Okay, thank you.
But it works. I found that the MC11 it does have some weird. it registers the 24 millimeter lens as a 17 millimeter lens. I have no idea why. And Sigma
Okay.
doesn't know either. I've sent them an email and asked them about it, and they don't have any idea why it registers it as a 17 millimeter. But using an adapted lens anyway, it doesn't transfer all of the lens information correctly. It gets you the EXIF data that's important, you know, the aperture, shutter speed, and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes it doesn't register the lens correctly. So,
Okay. All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
obviously, buildings are, a lot of them are glass, and working with reflections is totally fun for me, because you get to play with how things reflect. You know, does it distort it? You get to show things that are behind you or the area around it. This one on the left is probably one of my favorite reflection images, because this building here is so clean, and it's got so little texture to the outside of it. But I was reflecting this building that has all of this crazy texture and all of this fenestration on it, that I just liked the juxtaposition of that really textured building being reflected in the really clean modern building. And the one on the right is reflecting an old building in a new building. I posted this image in black and white the other day, a little bit wider view of it. But what struck me about this one was how rigid and plain the new building is, but reflecting that ornamental and heavier feeling of the older building in that glass. And so it's just, you know, playing with the different layers and using it to make an interesting image, at least for me. You get to see all this crazy distortion, because what people don't always realize is that glass is a liquid that is cooled, and so sometimes glass warps and it doesn't. I mean, look at that. That window looks like it's got a big arc in it, and this one looks like it's got an S curve to it. But that's just the way glass reflects. It's not purely flat in a situation like this. Like this one, obviously they used really good high-end glass because it's got clean reflections with no distortion. But sometimes glass has interesting distortions, and I just liked the way that one presented with all the, it kind of felt a little bit like a little Salvador Dali painting, reflecting that old building. And it's not just about taking a picture of the whole building. Sometimes it's just patterns and textures and the way light hits things, or juxtapositions of, you know, this very rigid new building with this really old dilapidated building with this fire escape on the outside, and the outside of the building looks like it's falling off. Or the way light bends around the curves of the Guggenheim. The little details are the things that I have a tendency to look at a lot when I'm out doing something for myself that's not a portfolio type photograph or a documentary where I'm shooting it for somebody. I'm always looking at little details, little reflections about how all these lines come together and how they interact. And as an architect, I can appreciate the thought that went into this type of design, where you've got this very rigid outside, but then you throw in this weird curve, and then you just have this Frank Gehry building that I don't even understand how they create that stuff. But that building looks like it's moving. It looks like it's alive. And that's all about using the light of that day and zooming in on it so that you don't have a picture of the whole building, and just focusing on little patterns and little textures and details.
Where is that building?
This is in New York City. I've just drawn a blank on the name of it. It's an apartment building, actually, by Frank Gehry, and it's really weird, obviously, but you know, that's kind of what he does. He has buildings that look like the skin of the building is moving and constantly changing, and if you stare at it long enough, it actually does start to move in your head. It's really weird. It's kind of one of those optical illusions. And no two sections of the building look the same. I mean, you walk around the building and it looks different everywhere you look. with different ins and outs. And as an architect, I can't imagine the detailing that went into it. But as a photographer, I really like all the play on it. I mean, you've got this nice curved edge that lets light fall off on both sides. But this one's a really sharp edge, so that it's a harsh shadow and a harsh highlight coming together. So it's just a matter of playing with those and finding those different little things to try to put into a frame. I love the details of it. I mean, I was talking about the textures and patterns, but it's always about details, about interactions, and even something as simple as this doorbell cut out of the ivy in Savannah, but the doorbell matches the shape here and the round and playing on those different little things and not overlooking them. And sometimes it's a matter of just put on a longer lens, not even a telephoto lens, but put on like an 85 millimeter lens and walk around and look at the buildings that way. It's not always about shooting with a great big wide angle lens. And shooting up vertically, straight up. I mean, sometimes it's a little hard on my neck, but I love doing that to create, this interaction of this building with the one across the street. But again, getting these little reflections in, showing things that you can't actually see in the picture physically, but you get the little reflection that adds a little more depth, a little more context. And just finding old textures and details. This is a barracks in San Francisco. Just crazy texture, and the rivets and the green and the reinforcing coming through. And a lot of times I like to work and find odd numbers of items to put together. So 3 or 1. I don't really like to photograph. I would not have photographed this and only captured 2 of those doors. It doesn't have the nice weighting that doing 3 doors has. So just, play with different compositions and different numbers and, straight on or on an angle. But the details are super fun to play with. And of course, I have to throw a little long exposure in there because that's the thing I like the most. But that creates a sense of movement around a building and showing the interaction of that building to the place where it's in. And it makes that photograph come alive. This is the music museum down in or up in Nashville, but having the cars whizzing by and the people moving around, and it just creates a liveliness to the photograph that would have not been there if I had just been static. All the cars would have been super distracting, but now they're just parts of the element that are very abstracted as they go by. This one is a long exposure of a sunset at the aquarium in Charleston. The light just happened to be really lining up really well to look like those clouds were radiating out of that building. And this one, I think a lot of people have seen. This is the Bean in Chicago. The long exposure makes all the people moving around it just be a part of that scene, as opposed to static and blocking everything. They become somewhat transparent. And for me, the long exposure just creates really dynamic, really lively images of a static object. I mean, when I do my long exposure presentation, that's what I talk about, is putting motion around something that is static. Well, in this case, the building is what's static, and everything around it, its environment, becomes the motion and the dynamic element. We didn't have a lot of questions. I was expecting more questions, but that's where we're at right now. And I knew we got other stuff to do tonight, but do we have some questions, or? I don't hear anybody.
Everybody unmute yourself and ask a question.
Could you tell us how long of an exposure these last 3 pictures are at?
This one, the one of the Nashville, is actually it's blended. I blended this exposure for this car, this exposure for this one, and then these, and I think they were all 30 seconds a piece. This one is probably 4 minutes. And this one is 3 30-second exposures stacked. The story behind that is I had forgotten my remote control back in the hotel room. And so I had to stack images rather than do one long, minute and a half exposure. Doing star or light trails like this with cars depends on where they are. Are they moving through the frame the whole way? And it's a matter of timing it. There's a car's down here. How long does it take for that car to get through the frame? And that's where I usually try to set my exposure to make sure that the cars can get completely through the frame when trying to figure that out.
The thing that struck me is that the one traffic light's got only the green showing, and the other one has both the red and the green. So,
and this one here has all three.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. That was one of the interesting things that happened because the exposure was long enough and timed with this light being red so that these cars were moving. And then in the middle of that light, it changed green. So that's why this one went from green to yellow to red during the exposure. It was just kind of a neat side effect that
Cool.
Was kind of cool. Not many people pick up on that. So whoever picked up on that, good eye.
Bonus points.
Yeah.
What did you use to make the edits? Was it Lightroom or?
For an image like that, I will do all of my basic edits in Lightroom on each of the frames, and then I'll blend them in Photoshop. And using layer masks to just blend it all together. Takes a little while painting them out and figuring out which works best. I think I probably shot a dozen frames standing there on the corner and pick which ones I like the best. Anyone else?
Very good talk, Travis. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm trying to get my camera to come back on. I don't know why. The battery must have died.
They're really gorgeous pictures.
Thank you. It's kind of there. It's back. It's kind of nice to be able to blend my day job with taking photographs. I have a different eye for it because I'm looking at it both as a photographer and as an architect. So, for like this one of the Nashville building, we walked around the entire building, which is like 6 city blocks, trying to find the angle that I like the most. And the problem with that building is there's so much going on that it was really hard to kind of come to a spot where the composition worked. There were so many things going on with that building that I really had a hard time figuring out what to photograph. And so then I just got the idea to do it like this with the traffic and the people and everything moving by. And so it was kind of fun. I'll bring this over here. Okay.
Any other questions for Travis?
I enjoyed it.
Great presentation.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Well, thank you, Travis, for being our first speaker of the year and a new presentation and always interesting. Very good.
Thank you.
It's always nice to see his pictures. He does a great job.
Yes.
And I actually made one of your Zoom meetings. It's a miracle.
Someone asked, Cassandra asked if I broke my camera when I dropped the MCL, when I dropped my adapter.
No. Your computer camera. You said it went off.
I don't know what happened.
I was trying to be funny, but it didn't come across that way.
Oh, I didn't see it until just now. I don't know what happened. It's never shut down like that unless it overheats, but it's not overheating. So I don't know what it did. I don't know. Electronics. Sometimes they do their own thing.
Well, I kept mine off because I just walked in the door and I'm eating, so it's been a long day.
Did you bring something for everybody, Cassandra?
I did not. It's I've never closed a house at 7 o'clock at night, but we finally left the attorney's office at like 7:15. So. I just want to
open the door.
What's that?
Be sure to open the door next time.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to follow Travis around. Maybe like a fly on your back there, Travis, and see all these beautiful places.
Yeah, I don't get to see very many places anymore. I used to get to travel a whole lot more.
I want to get down to the Hyatt because that's where I used to work for years, and I want to get back down to Sacred Heart and photograph.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many great architectural buildings in Atlanta, and I don't get down to Atlanta, and lately I just have no desire to go down there. But if you want a nice glass building, it doesn't have a whole lot of cool features other than the fact that it's glass. Is the Georgia Department of Revenue is one of the few full glass buildings I've seen in Atlanta. Travis, have you seen any other ones that are like glass buildings in Atlanta?
I'm trying to think. We don't have a whole lot that are just straight up lots of glass. A lot of them still have a lot of the marble and the granite on the sides. We don't, and we're so built out that there's the Ernst & Young building right there at Williams Street that is a lot of glass. And there's an apartment building, a studio type of condo building that I tried getting into one night and got myself kicked out of. But no, we don't have a lot of really truly glass buildings in downtown Atlanta. There's just nowhere left to build any of them. So
the problem with the Revenue building is it's not like in downtown. It's kind of like on its own little campus out in that Chamblee, not quite Brookhaven, but up there 85 before you get
Chamblee Tucker.
Yeah.
Okay.
Up in that area. So there's really nothing around it. It just looks like a complex that you'd see here in Woodstock, or Kennesaw.
Yeah, I've done several photo walks down in downtown, but they've all been a couple years ago, and it's always been fun. I see that Pamela asked, what's my favorite camera and lens? Well, for architecture photography, the higher resolution, the better, because it tends to pick up all of the details of the buildings, especially if they've got some good fenestration on them. And anything that's a really good sharp lens, and usually for me, that's going to be a tilt shift lens. They're so sharp, and they've got such great optical quality to them that they're probably my favorite. That would be my favorite, a high megapixel camera with a good tilt shift lens.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
What do you consider to be a high megapixel camera? Like how many megapixels?
My Sony A7R II is 42 megapixels, I think. Anything over 24. 24 is a pretty standard full frame camera these days. And I do some architecture or interior photography with my A7 III that's a lower megapixel, just because the people using it don't need the image quality. But if I'm doing something purely for good image quality, it's going to be the higher megapixel camera.
Do you have any suggestions on non-shift tilt lenses that are good that you like?
Probably something that's a prime lens. Prime lenses tend to have better image quality and sharpness over a zoom, particularly anything that's a really long zoom. Anything that's going to go from like 18 to 250. Those lenses that cover a lot of ground are, they're good for being a good walk around lens, but they're not normally known as being super sharp for architecture. So I've got a prime lens that's an 18 millimeter that I really like, and I've got a 25 millimeter that I really like, that are good and sharp, good contrast lenses that produce really nice images when you get them nice and sharp. And you don't have to shoot them at f/16 or something like that. They're really sharp at f/10, f/11.
Is it pretty easy to use a tilt shift lens?
Once you get the hang of it, it is pretty easy. The first time I used one, it was a little intimidating because there's lots of knobs and moving parts on the outside of them. They look really funny. I mean, because they can rotate all the way around and they can shift in, up and down, left and right, but then on both diagonals. So you create an image that's got 13 images in it. So it's just the tricky part is making sure you know which direction you're going so that you don't shoot the same shift or tilt both twice or something. But once you get the hang of them, they're actually really great to work with. And I like working with them for doing landscape photography also for the same reasons. They're very sharp and they can get you a wider view without shooting wide. The concept that if you're shooting at 24 millimeters, you can see more of it and it's a little bigger in the frame, but you just can't see as far out to the sides. Well, if you use a tilt shift, now you can see all of that stuff, but still have it big in the frame as opposed to, backing up or shooting with a 12 millimeter where it makes everything really little in the frame.
You have one in front of you to show us?
I don't, because I don't actually own them. I usually have to rent them because they're very expensive. And I have yet to actually make the jump to actually purchase one. I use them whenever I need them. I just go rent it from like Aperture Rent downtown. It's not terribly expensive to rent, but they're kind of expensive to own. One of these days, it's on my wish list. All right, anyone else?
If anyone is interested in an architectural shoot, some of you may have seen this, but Paul Daniel, who talked to us last year, he has the Atlanta photography meetups. He is doing a sunset shoot downtown. It's from the parking deck of the GDOT building on Spring Street. I don't have the exact address here, but I do have it. I can get it off of their Facebook page. But this parking deck is pretty much across the street from the varsity. They're meeting at about 4:30. I think sunset's about 5:40 tomorrow. And last year I went on one of his trips and they had about 30 photographers there. I don't know, but that was also right before all the quarantining started. I don't know how many people will be there. It's supposed to be cold tomorrow night. Of course, he has requested that everybody who goes wear a mask, but it's free. You don't have to tell anybody you're going. So if anybody's interested in that, just message me after the meeting. I can give you the details. I might be going. I haven't decided for certain yet, but yeah, just message me after the meeting. I'll send you the details.
Mike, isn't that the same location that we did back in Barch?
Exact same location.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the only difference this year, I think Travis might have been there last year too.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to pull up I was going to pull up the picture from up on the roof deck to give people an idea of what.
The one thing that'll be different is that we won't be doing the walk to Centennial Park. According to Paul, Centennial Park is closed, so it's going to be just the sunset shoot. But I don't think I'm worried about going all the way to Centennial Park.
That's I don't know if you can, that's the view from up on the parking deck. So you're up pretty high and lots of traffic down and around. This is the Ernst & Young building I was talking about earlier, and this is the Weston, and then there's the Peachtree Weston. But you can see everything else, they all have less glass, so most of our buildings are not all glass.
I don't see anything except the regular blue screen for the club.
Let's see, let me take off my share. Maybe it'll show yours.
There you go.
All right. I was able to see it because I had two screens.
Ah,
The sunset will actually, from this view of the picture, the sunset is actually to the right. I
mhm,
think it's the Georgia State's
mhm.
dorms are to the right, just by the interstate, and the sun will be setting behind there tomorrow. But should hopefully be able to get the reflections on the building. We also had a very, as you can see, a very clear night last year. According to the Weather Channel, there's supposed to be clouds tomorrow. Hopefully they're good clouds and not the bad types of clouds.
Hopefully they're the kind that we had out there tonight.
Yeah, I missed tonight, but I saw somebody's picture. So
Tonight would have been a good night to be out shooting sunset. The clouds were perfect for it.
It was beautiful.
if only we didn't have a photography club meeting. I
know,
scheduled
right?
poorly.
Damn meeting. You know, 210 Peachtree has quite a bit of glass right there on Weston.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if anybody wants to go or has any questions, message me. I'll give you the details. Like I said, I'm not certain I'm going tomorrow, but I'll probably be going. All right, let me go ahead and share the screen again, and we'll
Barry,
do our
you're
photo
funny.
challenge.
That what?
I said you're funny.
What happened?
I'm not bringing my guns, but I'm not going at all. I'm not doing downtown Atlanta for the next.
Oh, okay. I did have a question for Travis. One more question real quick.
Okay.
On the church you showed at the very beginning or a little bit into your program, the one with the red face there, it's over near the Civic Center. Have you ever seen the stained glass in that church?
No,
That
sir, I
Catholic
haven't.
Church?
Mm-mm.
It is incredible if you can get in there and photograph the stained church, stained glass.
No, I haven't been inside any of them.
Yeah, but the red church you had the facing of, inside that church, the glass is incredible. If you want to see some great stained glass.
Cool.
Which church was that, Barry?
He'll know which one. It's over near the
I think
Civic.
it's the Is it the Presbyterian church over there?
No, it's actually the Catholic Church.
Oh, are you talking about Sacred Heart?
Yes.
That's the inside of it. That used to be my church for like 10 years. The inside is like wrapped with cream and gold. It is just unbelievably beautiful. That's right there by the Hyatt. It's a few blocks away from the Civic Center. It's over at West Peachtree and Peachtree Center, not West Peachtree, Peachtree Center Avenue and Peachtree Street, where they combine, where the old Imperial Hotel is.
Right. And Travis, you talked about other glass buildings. There are some other glass buildings that are behind the King and Queen, but kind of toward where the Art Institute was or is.
Mm-hmm.
And they're real tall and they're just straight up and they're nothing but glass at sunset.
The King and Queen are good buildings for that. They're all glass. They're nice.
Yeah. But thank you so much, Travis, for everything presentation tonight.
No problem. Enjoyed it.
Excellent, Travis. You're welcome to stay and participate in the challenge and vote for the chat in the challenge.
Planning to.
So, can everybody see the screen?
Who's that bald-headed guy there?
I don't know.
Okay.
See the monthly challenge theme. The screen here that I have all the challenges for the year. Is that up showing to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Just want to make sure. All right. So these are our themes for the year. I also have this on our Facebook page. If you go to the events page, it's listed as something like monthly themes. So they're all there, and they all have the correct Dropbox links on them. I'm not going to read them all to you, but you can see them. But this month, our theme is America the Beautiful. And basically what we were looking for are things like landscapes, flags, celebrations, anything representative of the of all the good things in our country. So we made a couple of rule changes with the photo challenges. Some of it's still the same, still one image per person, but we went back to 2 years old on the images instead of the 1 year time limit. And that was because we just knew a lot of people weren't able to get out to shoot last year. The goal is to get you to go out and shoot and not go looking through your archives, but right now times are different and not everybody can get out to shoot. So we went back to 2 years. No composites for the monthly challenge. You must be a paid member. You must be attending the meeting or be online, but we will allow 1 miss per year. So if you enter an image, but you can't make the meeting, that's considered your 1 miss. And I've noticed a few of the people who entered this month aren't here, so they're going to get their miss out of the way right away. And then the other new thing this year is the photographer of the year is going to win $100 at the end of the year, as well as a trophy. So sort of a bigger incentive to get you to enter. Don't worry. We hear some people worried about their photography skills. This is open to everybody. We vote. Go for it. But you do need to be a paid member. Most of you know, you vote by a number. Each picture will be numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. You're going to vote for first, second, and third place. Don't vote for the same photo multiple times, though. When you're voting, think about whether or not the image fits the theme. Again, America the Beautiful. And then after the meeting, email your votes to vote@ngaphoto.club. That's not photo.com, it's ngaphoto.club. And Lisa tallies the votes. And then we'll either get the winners posted tonight or tomorrow. And these are how the points go: 5 points for first, 4 points for second. At the end of the year, we'll total up the points and award the photographer of the year. So I'm going to go through these a couple of times. We had 14 images tonight. So this is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. And now I'll go backwards. So we got 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'll go through them one more time just to drop faster. So number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Does anybody else need to see them again? All right, sounds like we're good. Send your votes to vote@ngaphoto.club. Again, not .com, but photo.club. It is 8:30 right now, so you have till 8:45 to get your votes in. And our next meeting is going to be on February 19th at 7 p.m. Our presentation is going to be by Rob Knight. He's a professional photographer. We don't know what his topic is going to be. He's an expert at a lot of things, so we don't know what he's going to talk about yet. I checked out his website though. It's going to be a good. It's going to be a good presentation, no matter what he decides to discuss. And our photo challenge. Our photo challenge thing for next month is going to be bridges. And that's it.
Okay.
So thanks so much, everybody, for coming. Happy New Year. Thank you, Travis. And like I said, if anybody wants to information about that photo shoot in Atlanta tomorrow, just message me in a couple minutes, and I'll send you the address of that parking deck, and I'll see everybody next month.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everybody.
Thank
Good,
you.
guys.
It was really good. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mike. Thanks, Travis. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank
Good,
you.
everybody. Great job, Travis.
Thank you, Travis.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good
Night.
evening.